I don't know.
Say it with me. I don't know.
Good God, it is liberating. I am a towering mountain of ignorance. I don't know. We're taught to believe that everything has a reason. And so we observe the world, we see what happened, and then we define the thing that happened as the reason the thing happened. But I think a lot of the time we end up mixing up thinking something with knowing something. This is why it can be so impossible to talk about certain topics with certain people. They've tied those suppositions to themselves so tightly with knots of narrative and constructed reality and values that there's just no untying it. And maybe unsurprisingly, in those situations, the best course of action is just to be friends. Maybe even ask them about that thing that they've created, because to them, it's immensely valuable. The world as we perceive it, as we've built it inside of ourselves, is a lie that we tell to ourselves, not out of deception, but out of necessity. We have no other choice. We simply cannot understand the world as it is, and so we construct. But sometimes I just have to tell myself the thing that is definitely true, the truest thing I can say, which is that I don't know.
Never know.
This is the Everyone's Agnostic Podcast with Bob Pondillo and Cass Midgley.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 145 of the Everyone's Agnostic Podcast. I'm Cass Midgley. Today, Dr. Bob Pondillo and I interview a couple by the names of Silvia and Ken Hays from California. Ken is 60 years old and served as a pastor for 25 years after finding Jesus in the military as a 19-year-old. Silvia is 58 and fresh out of her Shawshank Redemption from Christian patriarchy, out from under the microscope of being a pastor's wife, and discovering her personal agency for the first time in her life. They met in a cult-like missionary training group where their courtship was forbidden by the leadership. They snuck out in the dead of night to be together back in 1979. They've been married 37 years, but recently had to redefine their post-Christian partnership, and their marriage almost didn't survive the transition. But today, they're happily moving through these metamorphic changes, however retarded by Christianity and their damaging childhoods. Like all our guests, they are overcomers. It's hard work to get through it, as you'll hear in the following conversation. Before we get into that conversation, though, I want to talk about agency. We talk about it a lot on the show. An agent is defined as a person or thing that acts or has the power to act. Personal agency refers to one's capability to originate and direct actions for given purposes. It's influenced by how much a person believes in their self in two ways. One, their effectiveness in performing specific tasks, which is also known as self-efficacy. And two, by their actual skills. In other words, can you do it? And when you do it, is it effective? Does it produce the results you want? In the context of this podcast, specifically conversations around the various hardships of leaving one's faith, when we're talking about agency, we're talking about undoing the damage caused by religious doctrines that are designed to neutralize the will of its practitioners. Scriptures like, "You are not your own, you've been bought with a price." And Jesus said, quote, "If anyone wants to become my follower, he must deny himself, take up his cross daily, and follow me." He also said, "Very truly I say to you, the Son can do nothing by himself." Nothing. He can do only what he sees his Father doing, because whatever the Father does, the Son also does, unquote. In Philippians 2, Paul admonishes the people to emulate Jesus, who, quote, emptied himself by taking on the form of a slave. Are you kidding me? Emptied himself. And this is a good thing. We're to emulate this. Taking on the form of a slave. He humbled himself, became obedient. How obedient? To the point of death. even death on a cross. So at what point will you wise up and say no to the bossy people in your life? Till they tell you to die? Is that when you say enough's enough? Nope, not in Christianity. You do even that. That's the level of your emptiness, the level of your devotion to what other people want you to do and what God wants you to do. If they want you to die, then you die. This is Paul's advice, for God's sake. And it's regarded as a good thing, a strength. You get that? In this world, this subculture, they think this is good, that you're strong. You're a strong Christian if you have so little agency that if the person you're dependent on for everything, purpose, direction, ideas, where we're going to dinner tonight, how many times you should give your body sexually to your lover, the person that basically dictates your life and does all your thinking for you, if you're that much of a pushover, spineless, you have no original thoughts, you have no skills that could get you out of a bind, you can't solve a riddle, you don't ever know what your next move is, you constantly need people to tell you what to think and do, and if they asked you to kill yourself, you would do it. This is strength in that world. This is the breaking of the will. This is the castrating of the gelding. This is Stockholm Syndrome. It doesn't matter whether or not Paul or Jesus intended to create such evil psychological tools to control people. It doesn't matter because many thousands of people who've come after them have co-opted their words and empowered their words by calling them God's words to use them to control people for over 2,000 years and even as we speak. The movie Birth of a Nation tells the story of a slave named Nat Turner who'd become literate by reading the Bible and thus became a Christian. In 1831, he was toted around from plantation to plantation so that he could preach Christianity to as many of his fellow slaves as possible, because the slave owners had figured out that Christian slaves were the best kind, more submissive, subservient, and obedient. So, some of us who have escaped the bondage of Christianity have found ourselves at a loss when we wake up to a godless world and we have to think for ourselves. We realize there's no God watching over us, protecting us, guiding us, faithfully providing money for us, and he never was. He's advising us. It's as if the natural agency that is supposed to hit young adults when they move out of their parents' house is hijacked, suspended, and handed over like a baton to God. Maturity, responsibility, independence, freedom, they're all stunted by this handoff to Christianity. Ex-Christians, especially the more submissive, devout types, have to figure out, number one, who they are, number two, what they like and dislike, and then learn the ability to take action, to be effective, to influence their own lives, and assume responsibility for their own behavior. These same ex-Christians can also unknowingly try to continue the process of transferring their dependence to an outside source, from their parents to their God. And what's next? After both your parents and God are gone, they're lovers. The parents are out of their life. Oh, there's God. I'll get under his leadership. Ooh, safe and warm. Oh, wait, there's no God. Where do I turn for guidance? What do I do? Someone tell me what to do. I must find a helpmate. Yep, that's what we call them, helpmates. But the pitfalls of dependency and codependency are coming. It's not fair to put that much pressure and responsibility on another. And the chickens are going to come home to roost, motherfuckers, with a vengeance. These are not nice, fuzzy, soft chicks. These are Tasmanian devil chickens. These are saber-toothed tiger chickens. And you're going to wish that you knew how to take care of yourself really bad. You're going to wish that you knew how to rein in your own anxiety and stress and fear. You're going to wish you knew how to self-comfort, but you don't know how. So now at age 30 or 40 or 50, or in the case of our guest today, 60, you're going to have to learn. And it's some serious hard work to teach an old dog these new tricks that should have been learned decades ago, before your agency was hijacked by fantasy. One of our guests today, Ken Hays, wrote this, quote, "Facing the reality of life, post-mythical safety net Jesus, has been the most difficult thing I have ever done. Telling fear to remain in its place in the corner of my mind has been a daily exercise that I think I'm getting stronger at. I love the freedom of, or at least the concept of, agency. But it is no easy custom-fit garment that slips right on. I have to fight for every piece of the pattern, taking it off and putting it back on 1,000,000 times a day, or so it seems. Still, regardless of how it all ends up, at least I'm choosing to try freedom from fear and victimization." Unquote. Ironically, the path to obtaining bravery requires bravery. We make the path by walking it. There is no refuge from the harshness of life to hide except death. So if you're going to choose to stay alive, and you're choosing not to look outside yourself for strength, to mommy and daddy, or God, or your lover, these are the reactions of no-sayers. You're going to have to learn to say yes to what is. We taped this conversation on March 11th, 2017. We interview people you don't know about a subject no one wants to talk about. We hope to encourage people in the process of deconstructing their faith and help curb the loneliness that accompanies it. We think the world is a better place when more people live by sight and not by faith. Please subscribe to our podcast or leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Our show is available on most podcast platforms. Also, you can support us monetarily in 2 easy ways. You can pledge $1 per episode through Patreon. That's patreon.com/EA podcast. Or leave a lump sum donation through PayPal at our website, everyone'sagnostic.com. The smallest contribution is greatly appreciated. Our opening monologue is an excerpt from a YouTube by Hank Green titled Towering Mountain of Ignorance. The music behind it is Never Know by Jack Johnson. The segue music on this episode is created by the Barry Orchestra, found at barryorchestra.bandcamp.com. Don't forget, ReasonCon in Hickory, North Carolina is coming up the weekend of April 21st. More information is available at reasonnc.com. Thanks for listening, and be a yes-sayer to what is.
Buenos dias.
Buenos dias, Keno. Is this Ken?
Mi amo es Ken.
Yeah,
Sí.
mi amo is
welcome
Bob.
to California, guys.
Roberto. Oh, well, thanks, Ken. Thanks. This is Bob, the Bob part of Cass and Bob.
Hey, Bob.
Hello. Is Silvia with you as well?
She is just putting on her high-tech
Hello, Ken.
headset there.
Oh, very good. Hi, Silvia.
Hi.
Nice to meet you. I'm shaking your hand cybernetically, or whatever the word is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what part of California? Did you already ask that?
No, just somewhere in California. Where are you?
Yes. So we're currently out of Sacramento in a city that's going east towards Tahoe in a little town called Rancho Cordova.
Mm-hmm.
So, and Sacramento, boy, that's a nice area. That's the state capital. Very
It
nice
is.
area.
It's a nice area. It's suitable for us right now.
Yeah.
What part of Tennessee are you in?
Murfreesboro.
About 30
miles southeast of Nashville.
Yeah, so I grew up in Memphis, FYI.
Oh, okay. Are you from California then, Silvia? Where are you from?
Actually, I was born in El Paso, Texas, and I'm a child of 10 and only child born at home.
Catholics, huh?
The only child born at home?
Yes, out of the 10, yeah.
Was that an accident? Like, didn't have time to get to the hospital?
Well, of course, my mother being Catholic, she just happened to be on her own that night and prayed to St. Lawrence and that she would have a safe delivery and that she would name me after St. Lawrence. So my middle name, thus, is Lorenza.
Lorenza.
Oh, isn't that something?
Well, St. Larry pulled through for you guys.
Yeah, St. Larry.
So I have a friend in El Paso, and it's a military base, for one thing. Was your dad military, or?
Actually, he was in the Army, and he was a paratrooper.
Okay.
Wow.
And I'm sad to say that that's really pretty much all that I know as far as his service goes.
Okay. No, it's a big deal.
Did he pass away, or what happened? Did he die?
Yeah, my dad's been passed away a little over close to 9 years, I think now.
Has been, yeah, that's right, yeah.
And I just recently lost my mom. This month, actually, the 17th will be, I want to say 3 years.
3 years, yeah.
Well, that's tough. That's
we're at that stage in life where our parents are all gone now.
Yeah.
We're next in line.
You're orphan.
Stop that. I'm in denial.
Yes, the line is forming. So you're orphans. I get it.
Yeah.
Well, Silvia, if you're in denial of death, you're in good company because the whole human race is in denial of death, if you ask me. So.
Oh, that's for sure.
Yeah, but I think that personally I'm in a good place in my life than I've ever been. So I feel good about that.
Well, that's good.
Well, let's talk about that. So you guys are, to go back to both of your religious upbringing. We already know Silvia was raised Catholic. What about you, Ken?
Well, actually, and Silvia will have to elaborate on
I will.
that.
Yes, I will.
We'll go into that. Okay.
My mother was Catholic as well. My father was of no particular affiliation that I knew of. And so we were enrolled in Catholic school as kids and all that. But my home life, my grown-up life was exceptionally dysfunctional, to use an old term, and, riddled with a lot of violence, substance abuse, incest, a lot of things that were real tumultuous, resulted in a very tumultuous upbringing. And so, but we never, once we hit puberty, that was it for me in terms of religion. At that point, I was already engaged in substance abuse and my own world of survival, whatever that meant. But I became a convert to evangelicalism, fundamentalism, at the age of 19 when I was in the Air Force. And that's where my, quote, professional career began almost at that point.
So as like a 12 or 13-year-old, you're already using alcohol and drugs, or?
Yeah, I think the first time I took drugs, I don't even know what I took. We were down in Mississippi, and this
Probably.
Was pre-meth.
Pre-meth, okay.
These are pre-meth days, boys. Okay. This is when drugs were, back in my day, the good drugs were basically the orange sunshine and the purple haze, the good LSDs, of course, pot.
Right.
Drinking, although I was never really a big drinker, even though my father was quite the alcoholic. But then anything else we could get our hands on. We went through phases in my teen years of each summer would be almost a summer with a drug theme. There were the Quaalude themes and the Seconal themes and, whatever barbiturates we could get a hold of. And then there was a speed theme, and then there was an LSD theme. So we had all these, whatever we could get our hands on, it was sort of the drug of the month type thing.
Wow.
So how old are you guys?
I'm 60.
Yeah, I'm 58, and I actually listening to my husband talk about all of his experiences, and not obviously the first time I've heard it, but I'm glad that I was not a part of that.
Yeah.
Well, between the military and Jesus, you got cleaned up, though, it sounds like, Ken.
I did. Well, the military, there's a little bit of a story. I don't want to go into the details, but one of my brothers, my older brother, was arrested for assault and robbery.
Oh, boy.
And was basically facing jail time, even though he was a juvenile offender. And the judge, asked him, "What are you doing to clean up your life?" And on the spur of the moment, he said, "I just joined the military." So the judge said that he would preclude him going to jail if he went into the military. So he came home and woke me up, as I recall, on a Saturday or Friday, whenever that was, and said, "Hey," he said, "do you want to go into the military with me?" And so that's how I ended up in the military, is agreeing to go in because to help my brother stay out of jail.
Wow.
He ended up not going in, but I did. So that's a whole nother story.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what's your birth order in the 10 kids there, Silvia?
I'm actually the middle-born child, exactly middle-born child.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'm a very crafty person. I love crafting. I love cooking. we tend to host a lot, have friends over, and
Are we going by your last name, or are you guys just going by first names?
It doesn't matter to me.
yeah, no,
Okay, you're out of the closet, right? I mean,
Yeah, we're out. We're as out as we can be. Most people don't care. So
yeah,
it
you're in
doesn't-
California.
Yeah.
That's nice. Well, I was going to say party at the Hays house, and then I thought, well, maybe they're going by just their first names. But you guys are you're hostesses, and
That's great.
well, we're really kind of not, we don't have any family in Sacramento,
right.
but we do have one son who's in the ministry, and he is very open and receiving towards us. So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Wow, isn't that interesting? How many kids do you have?
We have 3. We have 1 girl and 2 boys, and our daughter is the oldest, and they were all born in March, born in 80, 81, and 82. And that's only because neither one of us wanted to do or to use birth control.
Some of that Catholicism bleeding over.
That's right.
No,
Okay,
I don't know
that's
if that was a religious decision on your part, but my wife and I did the same thing, that there's a part of the movement that we were in.
Oh,
and
the full quiver.
It's full quiver type stuff, or Bill
bullshit.
Gothard type stuff, but it's actually kind of stems similar to the Catholic notion in that contraception is playing God. I mean,
Well, taking an aspirin is fucking playing God. What's wrong? Shut up. Just shut up. What's
Hey,
wrong with
taking
you?
LSD is playing God too. It's a hell of a lot closer.
yeah, you can touch the heavens and feel connected to all things, and the tree and the
Yeah, sure.
So we had 4 kids in 5 years. You had 3 kids in 3 years. It sounds like.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
Well, and I have to tell you here too that I was not ever into the party scene. I never did any drugs. I was never curious about anything that was going to put me in a place where I felt vulnerable, because I felt vulnerable all my life growing up as a child and really not being able to be heard and just no agency whatsoever.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's a big
that
deal.
something?
Agency is a word that comes up on this show a lot.
Right, sure. So take a drink, everybody.
Right.
Well, and I'm not afraid to say I'm going to be turning 59 this year, and for the first time in my life, I'm getting my own agency for the first time, and I have more freedom than I've ever had in my life.
Really?
Yes.
Great.
There's so much that we can unpack here, because I fucking love this subject of agency at midlife.
Yeah.
My wife and I are doing it too.
Yeah.
And I think it has to do with Christianity. Now, I would ask you, Ken, how long have you guys been married?
38.
30, no. He always gets this wrong, but that's okay. We're going on 37 years.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I would like to add though, I got pregnant out of wedlock.
But don't tell anybody.
We don't.
Yeah, no, don't tell.
Can't
We
do
don't
that.
want that shameful secret to get out.
Well,
And
gee.
so I think he likes to, well, I don't know.
No,
I
they're-
can't really speak for him, but I'm just saying that it'll be 37 years in July.
Yeah.
Okay. So he marks it from the pregnancy, maybe.
He marks it from the...
Yeah, he
good.
wants it to be legit, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it'll be 37 years. And the only reason I know that is because all of our kids' birthdays are this month. And in fact, our son, Aaron, our middle son, is turning 36 today.
Oh, well, happy
That's
birthday.
great. Well, I have a daughter that turned 23 today.
Really?
Oh,
Oh, that's
awesome.
right. That's
yeah,
right.
my second daughter.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
So you mentioned your kids. You have the oldest girl, and then 2 boys after that. Is that?
Yeah, so-
which one is the? Are they all religious?
No, not any longer as far as our daughter goes, Christina, and then our son, youngest son, Kenny, which is our military son.
Yeah, Kenny is an out atheist, although he doesn't like the label.
Yeah.
He just understands his own agency and embraces that. Our oldest son, I don't want to say he followed me into the ministry, but he got his master's degree in education administration and was a teacher for a while. And then we had, when the recession hit, there was a huge round of layoffs out here in California.
Right.
And it was his first year of tenure, and he got cut. So he ended up going into the ministry and is the pastor of a very large church in Redding. I don't know if you guys are familiar with.
The story.
Yeah, no, not the String. What's the name of that big church up there that is so worldwide? The one up
In Reading?
Yeah, in Reading, Bill
Johnson
is the pastor. This is another church that's in that area that is a very up and coming church. But our son leads a mentoring program for the church that is more secular than it is religious, and where he is establishing this huge mentoring city for at-risk youth.
Oh,
And it's very cool what he does.
yeah,
And,
sounds great.
yeah. And so anyway, he and his wife, and they identify as Christians. We don't really talk about it much. It's one of those subjects where we simply don't address.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Well, what I was going to ask you, Ken, was if you guys have been married 30 plus years, and Sylvia's just now experiencing agency and feeling like she has a voice. What does that say about your husbanding?
Yeah. So
Hot question.
No, I'm asking because
where's the hang up button? Where's that damn hang up?
well, if you know anything about me in this show, I have been on that journey myself. Like Mindy and I are on 30 years of marriage, and recently there was some expression of
resentment
about Christian patriarchy that as liberal as I was and as progressive as I thought I was, there were times in our lives where the buck stopped with me, and I basically made decisions that were really destructive. Ended up being with the benefit of hindsight. And she's looked back and said, you kind of bullied us. And I'm like, fuck, who? What? Me?
Yeah, right.
So
right.
I can say that, Ken, because it takes one to know one, and I'm interested to hear your perspective.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And by the way, I've really been enjoying, been listening to the podcast for probably a couple of years now, but more recently, and I'm hearing that developing Cass, in your dialogue, and it's certainly been a journey for us as well. Of course, you're absolutely blind to it I was absolutely blind to it for a long time. There were hints. I mean, I kind of knew it, but I ignored it because the church promotes the idea that you're the man and all those kind of things. But, agency is a central point of conversation and part of both of our journeys. Yeah. But the misogyny and the misogynistic leftovers from my whole life, I don't want to just say it came from Christianity. It was certainly, if my family created the form, then Christianity was a cement that went into that form for misogyny. But there's been a lot of unlearning, trying to resolve the tensions of the past. When you have adult children and when they get to a certain age and their own agency is coming into play in their own lives, and there becomes resentment. A lot of times there becomes a lot of resentment. And especially when they don't have the perceptions that I had when I was a fundamentalist. None of my children had carried any of those perceptions forward. And there was a very painful period of my life where I didn't speak to our son, our pastor's son, for I think 2 years.
Wow.
And there were long gaps in being able to speak to my children, gaps of months, where there was so much tension around my past behavior as a father figure. And so that forced me to really go through some very hard introspection. And you can intellectually recognize it. But then you have these habits and behaviors that you have to be cognizant of and catch them early enough that you're not repeating them, like over speaking your spouse or but for me, for a long, long time, it was really about, I wanted my wife to be a certain image of what I thought other pastors' wives should be like. And so in my journey, in my life, there was always this effort to make us appear as fucking normal as everybody else. And it was just an exercise in absolute futility and frustration.
Yeah, because people are pretty well fucked up, and most everybody is. And so this facade that you put forth, that's the lie, really. Not the normal.
But when so we've kind of skipped ahead, and I don't mind these jumping around. It's good movies do this, so we can do it in our show. But chronologically jumping around. But were you a pastor?
Oh, yes. I was a pastor for about a full-time pastor for about 25 years.
Okay.
I pastored in 4 different churches.
Mm-hmm.
So the importance of a pastor and his wife looking the image, the role, the part, it is a microscope that the church has you under, and you try to hold up that image, and it's very toxic and destructive to both, to everybody.
Yeah.
And I appreciate your candidness there, Ken, because this is some humble pie we're eating here, buddy.
Yeah, truly. I didn't see it in terms of being humiliated or anything like that. It was more, I knew I was broken and I was desperate for healthy relationships with my wife and with my children primarily. Yep. And I was desperate to find that. And even in trying to recognize the problem, I was, at times I know overbearing, just trying to get the problem fixed, pleading with them to please let's come to a point of at least general acceptance. Even when you're trying to do what's right, you can sometimes do it all wrong.
Absolutely. Well, here's what's going on. I mean, one of the main things that I think is happening, especially if we're going to talk agency and maturation and how some of those arrested developments caused by Christianity, whatever else, that there's a term in psychology called differentiation. And one of the elements of differentiation is self-soothing and learning how to comfort your own anxieties. Right? So
my God, you just hit. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, big issue for us.
Right. So in those early stages of your self-awareness, or you're coming into an epiphany, Ken, that you kind of been a dick all these years, and you're now, I've got to look in the mirror, I've got to do the work. Well, in the meantime, you're hurting, and your pattern and your habit of 30 plus years is to look to others to comfort you. So all the while, like you said, when you're actually drowning in your own shit, and you've got some stuff you're going to try to work through, but because maybe that part of your maturation was stunted, then you're still looking to others to, and we used to look to God to comfort us.
Yeah, correct, right.
And so God's gone, and now all the kids are withdrawn, and your wife is establishing a declaration of independence, and so you're left alone, almost like the baby that we leave in the room to cry itself to sleep. But babies are resilient, and unless their diaper's dirty and they're hungry, they can actually self-comfort. So it's not even a matter of growing up, as it's a maturation issue. It's a human issue. That a good, healthy human can self-medicate and self-comfort. Not medicate, but
true. Yes.
Yeah, it seemed like there was a little. We hit a nerve there with the self-soothing for you, Silvia. What's going on there?
Well, I mean, that's one of the things that I think that both my husband and I can relate to, because when I was growing up, there was never any self-soothing in my family, and if anything, it was always this comparing of one child to another, and why can't you be more like this? And I've only learned as of maybe I guess 2 to 3 years learning how to self-soothe. And I got to the point where I felt like I needed to seek counsel, of which I did. It just helped me out so much.
Right.
It helped me to gain perspective, and it helped me to self-soothe and how to self-soothe. It's been one of the big comforts for me to know that I could do this for myself.
Yeah, it's huge.
So when you say self-soothe, it's like everything's okay, everything will be fine. Now, how do you do it? I don't understand.
There's a lot of practices, but you breathe and you relax, and you do tell yourself, like you just said, everything's going to work out.
Yeah, it's an illusion. It's okay. You'll feel better tomorrow. Get some
it's
sleep.
not an illusion. Sometimes it's real.
Yeah,
like the pain is real and the circumstances are real.
Yeah.
Well, it really it goes in such a deep level that all you can do is literally hold yourself. And I know that that's what I did, and would, soothe my arm and say, Silvia, you're going to be okay.
That's right.
This is all, it's going to work out. And, but in all of that, I had to tell myself that I had options. Before I felt like I never had options.
Right.
And I learned that through my therapist, that there's always an open door for you to walk out if that is what you need to do for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if you believe that there's never any options for you, then all you have is tunnel vision. And that this is the way life is. I watched my mother when she was growing up, hearing her story of coming from a mother who slept with so many men and had literally 10 children that were all from different men, and my mother and only had another sibling that was from the same man. So my mother, being the oldest of those children, ended up raising every one of them, and then turned around, who knows how many years passed, and had 10 of her own.
Wow.
Okay, so your grandmother was irresponsible. Your mother was probably the firstborn or the eldest. She ended up responsible for all the children to different fathers. Then years later, meets your dad, has 10 children of her own.
Exactly.
Okay. Still, very, both of you folks come from these very, very dysfunctional families, and look how good you turned out. You know what I mean?
I think we're seeing that they're a work in progress.
Well, you're working at it, of course, but
well,
great.
let me jump in, Bob, and
Sure.
just make a comment about that. I don't know how to say this gracefully. I'll just say it as probably as honestly as I can, and that is, we've been married all these years. I spent all those years in the ministry, and our lives were just an absolute internal mess.
Yeah.
We were,
in the beginning. In the beginning, it was very innocent. It was love.
Sure.
I believe that it was true love.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I get that.
I knew that when I saw my husband, when I saw him for the first time, I said, that is the man I'm going to marry. Don't ask me why. I don't know if it's women's intuition or whatever you want to call it. But I knew in my heart, it wasn't an emotion of like, ooh, all googly. I just knew that he was the man that I was going to marry.
Well, how much would both of you say that your relationship with God, as you're, seeing each other, courting each other, did you feel like God was saying this is the one?
Well, we've got an interesting story. Can I tell that story?
Yeah. In all honesty, though, really quick, though, in hindsight, I said that it was God that brought us together because really, honestly, I resisted to go to the school that eventually where we met. Hindsight said, yeah, it was God. But honestly, I think that, I don't know.
Well, let me tell the story.
Okay, go ahead.
Don't talk over her, Ken.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm trying. So we were both enrolled in the late 70s in a very small independent missionary training group.
Okay.
That had very cult-like attributes. I was in the Air Force when I first engaged this group and was over in Japan. When I got out of the military, I enrolled in their training program, which lasted a grand total of 9 months. But in order to complete it, I had to come back to Long Beach, California, once I was done over in Japan, and complete the training. That's where we met, in Long Beach.
Okay.
Both enrolled in this missionary training program that was a part of this group. When I say they had cult-like attributes, they all but had to approve who you married.
Whoa.
They determined what your calling was, whether you were going to be a pastor or a missionary or whatever. It became this hyper-controlled environment where you had all these young people and some couples, but most were singles, who came into this. We lived in a place called the Compound, where your every day was regimented. And we did a huge amount of Bible study and door-to-door and street witnessing. There's a great deal of indoctrination. So anyway, during that time, Silvia and I happened to be in the same class, and we started getting sweet on each other. But the leadership did not approve.
because they didn't decide, right?
They did not decide.
Yeah.
Jeez. And so they insisted that we prove God's will that we be together. Long story short, and after much prayer and fasting and all those kind of things that they required us to do, we decided in 1979 to leave this group and go off and be married. My proposal was the most romantic thing you'll probably ever hear. We sat down on a curb in Long Beach, and I basically said, well, you can either marry this group or you can marry me, but I'm leaving.
Wow.
And so Silvia said, well, let's go. So we packed our bags. Did we leave in the middle of the night?
It sounds like the Salvation Army. You know, they have these we had a Salvation Army guy on a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I heard that.
And it was all like, well, you know, you got to go here, you got to go there. They're going to decide who's going to marry each other. And it's like, what the hell? What?
Yeah. There's probably some similarities.
Yeah.
This was very micromanagement.
Right.
And where we had things that they called prayer and fasting sessions, where if you confided in your assigned counselor something very, very personal, there was a high degree of probability that was going to come out in the group session, where you would be shamed and humiliated in public and things like that.
Yeah. Wow.
But, that's how we got started on this whole process. That's how we met. That's how we got married and began this journey. So it really, when we did get married, it was under this great cloud of guilt and shame over the fact that we were not in, quote, God's will. And, you know, there were predictions about how long it was going to last, the marriage was going to last, and things like that. And, anyway.
I think that there was like a period of time that I think for him, for a while, it was proving everybody wrong about who I was personally as an individual, and him choosing to marry me. Because when I went to Long Beach, the church that supported me financially was not healthy at all. And they were hoping for me to become a missionary, and the church would support us. And it didn't turn out at all.
Yeah.
Well, so it sounds like there's not only a lot of people that disapproved of your marriage and thought you shouldn't get married, the odds are you're not going to make it, but there's also people that had invested on you going to this missionary school, and now you've left to be with this guy, and they may be, hey, you spent our money, or you know, we invested
that was definitely a part of it.
Yeah, there's all kinds of stigma, and so did I hear you correctly that Ken might have set out to prove them all wrong in that first year of marriage or something?
Well, no, that was absolutely. I mean, there was
quite a few years.
Definitely a stubbornness on my part.
Yeah,
you know, kind of a fuck you kind of a.
Yeah,
attitude.
Don't tell me what to do. Don't tell me who to marry.
Yeah.
But you know, kind of going back to where we started this, because you know we're both of us. I'm 60. She's approaching 60. So we got a lot of life stories, and I don't want to go down too many rabbit trails, but. You know, this is really centering around agency and not understanding spending our whole lives trying to find God's will. And Cass, I know you understand this, where you're told constantly that you are, you're a depraved individual. You know, anything you do in your flesh.
Yeah.
Is wrong.
There's no good in you.
There's no good in you. And so, you know, as a young person especially, and even through much of my ministry career, I'm always seeking out somebody to tell me something.
Right.
You know, please tell me what to do, because I don't know what to do. So I'm turning to God. I'm trying to get answers from God. And of course, He's a big help. And,
what about this phrase, Ken? You would go off and you would seek His face.
Yeah. Oh, God, yes. Oh, man.
That's a scripture, Bob, that, in the Psalms and stuff, but seek the face of God. You know, even last night, it's so strange. I haven't talked to God in 10 years, or at least tried to, but I had a moment last night, and normally I have my phone. Yeah. And I was just having a cigarette, and I didn't have my phone, and so I've got 10 minutes of cigarette time to just be by myself, and I'm not used to that. And it was weird how those old habits of like trying to talk to God in the still small voice, in the secret place, and all these terms that we used to use. And I was just, but one of the things that I did almost as an exercise, and this is going to sound silly to you people with lifelong agency and know God in your life, like Bob, is I literally just said, it's okay for me to just sit here.
Yeah.
And I don't have to play with my phone. I don't have to seek God. I don't even have to think about anything. I can just sit here and enjoy this.
Just sit in the
enjoy
silence.
Breathing in and out.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm sorry to derail you, but you were talking about, and one of the things that, again, I'm going to drop another word that's kind of in psychological terms, in contrast to differentiation, and that is fused. So you're fused with your family, you're fused with your spouse, you're fused with God, and basically your whole life is one after another act of reaction.
Yeah.
You're reacting to all these external sources. So you behave a certain way within your family because you feel the need to conform to what everybody expects you to be. You get into your marriage and you behave in a way that you know is best for that other person or is comforting that other person, or what does that other person want from me? It's all about doing what other people or God want you to do. And that muscle of agency and self-determination and individuation and differentiation is fucking atrophied to the hilt. You have never asked yourself, what do I want? You just don't ever think that way.
Yeah, right.
Well, I think for both Ken and I think we both got to the point where we had to decide for ourselves and what we wanted as individuals, and if it meant whether we wanted to stay together.
Yeah.
And there was a moment in time where I felt that I needed to physically remove myself from my husband so that I could get clarity. And at that time, I was also, in counseling. And, for the first time in my life, I had to make choices for myself that were separate from my husband, because we were fused together. We were like Siamese twins.
Exactly. That's the metaphor that the psychologists use.
Huh. Wow.
Yeah. And, I was working so hard to find my individual, person of who I am or agency, that I was so determined that this is not what I wanted for my life, and that I had a right to choose for my life, not just for my husband choosing for me.
Right.
And, and I had to hear other people's insight besides my husband, because he had my ear for so many years.
Yeah.
And I was very innocent. I was very naive.
Sure.
And there were so many things that I didn't know about life that I hadn't experienced. So I had nothing to measure what it meant to be my own person, to live life out on my own, which I always wanted to do. But because of that overbearingness of my mother and all of the insecurities that I carried, they were so all smothered deep down inside. And
well, let me just insert here that earlier you said you didn't experiment with drugs like Ken did. You didn't have these curiosities. You weren't restless, but in fact, you were erring on the side of safety and conservatism. And so, when you get into a relationship as that type of woman, to where you are conservative, you play it safe, you're risk averse, and you find a man who's going to lead you, that's actually comfortable.
Yeah.
For a while, anyway.
Exactly, for a while. What they're saying is it's unsustainable. But I'm telling you that when you, I can't put words in your mouth, but I know that one of the things that my wife was attracted to me about was that this is a guy on a mission. This is a guy with a plan. This is a guy who has passion and vision and opinions and direction. And that was attractive because she could ride my coattails.
Yeah.
But in your 50s and after 30 years of marriage, you're like, wait a second, I don't even know. I mean, so did you end up separating for a while and creating some space between you guys, Ken and Silvia?
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Good for you.
There are actually several times where basically Silvia left me. The first few times they were very, I think, what were total of 3, maybe 4?
About 3 times, 3 or 4, yeah.
And the last one was the most pronounced, and the last one you were gone for.
I was gone for a month.
Good.
I thought it was longer than that. It felt like longer, but
I bet it did.
but it was very pronounced.
But see, this is good. And I don't know if you heard a show a couple of weeks ago that I did where I interviewed Neil Carter for a little bit. And his insistence was that you got to create space.
Yeah. No, that was a good interview. And I don't know if you and I listened to that or not.
I don't think we did.
A lot of times on the weekends, I'll re-listen to it and with
It was episode 140.
140, yeah. So, we both have come such a long way, but I think one of the biggest things that I've learned in the value of having my own agency was that for the first time in my life, I was able to make choices for myself. And I've seen the courage of my own husband in giving me that freedom, which has been a very big thing for me.
Well, in your own courage, give yourself credit.
Well, yeah, and my own courage too, because, I just have never had a voice to speak out what was in my heart. It was just never given to me. And I think what I would always do is just to completely withdraw and to be silent, because I felt or believed that there was no value in what I saw or what I felt in my heart that anybody cared about.
Right.
So I just would cave every single time to go along.
Right.
Well, congratulations, Silvia, and welcome to the world, and come forth. I mean, Lazarus, come forth. I mean, I just want to say to the listening world that this is so amazing. I mean, you guys are sharing a story that is so similar to Mindy and I, and I know that it's out there, and it happens at midlife. It's almost like, puberty's coming at you whether you like it or not. That's a right.
Yeah.
And I feel like this midlife passage, because we could ask, and I think we should, that we could ask Silvia what was a catalyst for you, declaring your voice. And, actually it's hard to pin down, but I think my wife would say, something happened to where it's just like, I can no longer suppress and stifle and mute my own voice and my own thoughts. And it just reached a volcanic point. Where I have to, number one, it's weird because we can say, well, what do you want? Well, I don't know what I want because I don't even know who the fuck I am.
Exactly.
So you have to go down that road first, and that is best fostered in the creation of space. And then once you kind of get to know yourself and like yourself, and now you can start saying, well, what do I want? And actually, it becomes a life of trial and error. A baby crawls around on the floor, picking up stuff and putting it in his mouth and tasting it, decide whether he likes it or not. That's what from the get-go, we are little humans on a mission to find out what we like and dislike. Well, this is a stunted thing for a lot of people in Silvia's case. And so you literally get to set out, not get to, but have to set out tasting, trying, watching, listening, learning, and building a repertoire of what it is that Silvia likes and dislikes.
Yeah, and I think along with that, which I'm going to say something here that is really kind of risky and bold, I think, on my part, but I think it's something that I've keep coming to over and over again, and whether it happens or not, I honestly don't know, but I think it's a risk worth taking, because my husband had shared with me about, I think it was a podcast or something that he was listening to in regards to taking risks.
Right.
That's one of the biggest struggles that I see that my husband is afraid of, is taking risks in life. And I want to take risks. I want to go do something that would help our life and betterment and would be fun. And I have a passion for like entertaining, or even I've had come up with business plans of wanting to do something that would, open our doors to the world, so to speak, or to people in general, and widen our scope of the people that we know. But naturally, we are people. I mean, we just love it. And I think it's a part of our personality that I think we both have. And my husband is a very charismatic person, and he knows how to schmooze. He knows how to talk to people. I mean, I think a part of that is, from being a pastor, I think that is like come natural to him.
Right.
And even if he wasn't a pastor, I think it would have come natural to him.
Right.
But what I was going to say is that I would love to do a venture in having a little mom and pop shop of just doing appetizers. That's all we do is just do appetizers for people to drive by and pick up for a party or whatever. I want to do that, but it just seems like, our struggle is just being able to maintain.
Well, it sounds like the tables have turned, because if I understand correctly, you were risk averse for the first 55 years of your life, and Ken was probably more of the risk taker.
Yes.
And now you're out and proud and like, let's go risk. Let's start a restaurant. And Ken's the one putting on the brakes for a change.
Yeah, and I think that it's a part of the process, that
Sure.
I think that we're still going through. And I don't, the money is really not there, but I think I want to go and get my blood drawn to see if I have any kind of money coming to me through my nationality of being, having some Indian in me so that I can.
American.
Oh, I see. Go for a grant or something.
No, Native American.
I see.
You can get tax breaks, or I don't know.
Oh.
There's stuff that's available to Native Americans. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So, but, I would love to do something very small, very simple. My kids love me for my salsa. My kids love me for my enchiladas, so I want to do something. I really do. And, I don't know.
No, yeah. That's great. You are. So what happens when our voices are changing in puberty is they go up and down, or at least for men, and it's ugly and it's awkward, and we're getting hair in our armpits, and it's just weird and awkward. So the fact that this stage is weird and awkward and experimental, because it's kind of funny. I mean, I'll have to be honest with you, Silvia, that when you started this little last diatribe, it was, I'm going to say something and it's really risky, and then basically it was, I want to start a restaurant. I mean,
yeah.
Which is not that risky. I mean, I guess it is if you don't have the money. But I'm just saying,
it's tough too.
We are witnessing you both exercising your new, voices and things.
Yeah.
And
I just want so much more for us, and I know it's there.
Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
It'll be fine. It'll happen.
Well, and one of the things that is key to adulthood is you don't attach yourself to outcomes. That's a Buddhist thing. I mean, attachment is the source of all suffering in Buddhism. Yeah. But one of the things is that expectations,
yeah,
but just, have some dreams, have some visions, but to be present in the moment and just say, this is good enough as is right now. Say yes to what is. Well, I'm going to take a break. I've got to use the restroom for one thing. I drank a bunch of coffee this morning before the show.
That's right.
What? So, Bob,
yes.
really enjoy you guys' podcast. It's always enjoyable to listen to. I get a kick out of listening to you, especially. The shock of like they what? They did what?
That's right.
It always makes me chuckle.
Yeah, we love it.
It really is. Yeah. It really is something. Just like this notion of going to this cult-like thing where you guys met.
Yeah.
And then somebody telling you, well, you can't date her, you can't go with her, you can't marry her. And it's like, what? Right then I'd be out. I'd be like, no. I wouldn't go, of course, but
right.
But
yeah.
But isn't that
they
interesting?
Had asked him for scripture.
Really?
They wanted him to find a scripture that said, "Thou shalt marry Silvia."
The group were very strong literalists.
Yeah.
Find the scripture that Silvia. Oh, come on.
Yeah, they believe that if God is really speaking to you, He will verify it in His Word.
Mm-hmm.
And I found a verse that worked real well, but they didn't like it. There's a verse in Proverbs that says something like, "Let the breasts of the wife of your youth satisfy you all your days," or something like that. And I came back with a Bible verse, and they didn't like it.
Oh, I see.
Weird stuff.
Yeah, it is weird.
Yeah,
all right, I'm back.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
What's the question again?
So let's talk about how you lost your faith. I mean, so you were pastor for 25 years. What are we talking denomination-wise?
I think it was your podcast. You had somebody on who I think had been affiliated with the General Association of Regular Baptists.
I think
the
so.
GARB a few episodes back. But anyway, so that was the last group. So we started out in this evangelical fundamentalist independent group. You know, of course, like a lot of these groups are, everything is focused around the Bible, very strong on eschatology, doctrine, you believing the right things, etc., with an emphasis on propagation of the gospel.
Right.
So we started out, I pastored a church in Long Beach from 1983 to 1988 in Long Beach as a pastor. And that was a community church. We called it a community church. We did a lot of street ministries and things like that. And then we moved up to Northern California. I took a pastorate at a Baptist church up in the mountains in a small little community of 10,000 people. And it was a very interesting situation. But during that time, my doctrinal beliefs started to get very, very fundamentalist. In that sense, where you had to nail down specifically the timing of the rapture. You had to know specifically where you stood on the 5 points of Calvinism. All those things were very, very important things. Your interpretation of, the literal 6 days had to be spot on. So anyway, I'm in this church, pastoring away, and we're meeting with some good success and helping the church grow and all that kind of stuff. And because I always thought I was a pretty good preacher, but I'd never been to college, never been to Bible college. So I enrolled in a Bible college down in a neighboring town, and was attending the college. It was in a class on the Book of Romans, being taught by one of the local PhDs in that area, one of the local Bible scholars, and he was in chapter 4 in Paul's explanation about faith, basically, and talking about the specific nature of faith. And I was sitting there in an evening class listening to this teacher go through this explanation, the exegetical explanation of the passage. And I don't recall exactly what he said, but maybe it was the way he was saying it. It's almost like a light went on in the back of the room, and an audible voice, just like the same audible voice that I heard when I became a Christian, said, "I don't believe this."
Wow. And
here I am in class, and it kind of shocked me, that I heard this voice just say, "I don't believe this." Of course, I knew it was me talking to me.
Yeah.
And
wow.
But I stuffed it down. I went on from that church to move down into Redding, which is a larger city. Yeah. Where I became an associate pastor in a larger church. There's a lot of politics that went on. There's a lot of fighting and all the typical things that go on with churches. But there was an episode that occurred around the youth pastor of the church who there was an allegation of him having at least an inappropriate relationship with one of the girls in the youth group. And my daughter alerted me to it, and I alerted the senior pastor to it, and the senior pastor immediately proceeded to, hide it, conceal it.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
And so, long story, I don't want to go into all of that. So, but anyway, all these things were happening. I wasn't having a crisis of faith, but I was having a crisis of ministry, or I don't know what you would call it. I was just looking at all of the...
You were giving yourself permission, whether you realized it or not, that there was something wrong here.
Yeah, and I was really struggling with, where is Christ in this Christianity?
Yeah.
Where is the Jesus that I had idealistically, worshipped all these years and sought to serve? Where was he when, especially in a group that they insisted on being so, goddamn right about everything, right?
Yeah.
And no pun intended. I mean, they insisted on being so right about every fucking detail of the Bible. Yeah. It was, I'm thinking to myself, there was a point in my theological journey where I thought to myself, okay, all I need to do is to find the group that has the best answers, if you will.
The best Jesus.
The best Jesus, and maybe this stuff will get resolved, all these nagging problems that I was having. But what I noticed was during this time at that church, I began to not like who I was becoming.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Because I was realizing I was becoming this argumentative person, self-righteous, always looking for somebody to correct. And so anyway, long story short on that, the wheels just fell off. I mean, they just blew off that particular experience. And I left the church, and I took one more church after that, a little small community church up in the hills. They asked me to come in, they needed a pastor, and I went up there and I said to the church, I said, guys, look, I explained my situation, felt like I'd just been through a real rough patch. And I said, I'm willing to come up here and be a pastor, but I said, I can't right now. I have very low tolerance for fighting. I can't handle another fight right now. Yeah. I need a break from the fighting. And I'm not talking about the church fighting the world. I'm talking about Christians going at each other.
Yeah.
The infighting. And I said, guys, I just need a break. Well, that lasted for, I think, about 3 months. Somebody in the town heard that the church had a new pastor, and they came in and they sat in one of my sermons, and they started a doctrinal argument with somebody else in the church, and blah, blah, blah. And after, I don't know how long I was at that church, a couple of years maybe or whatever.
Yeah.
I just said, fuck it. I am fucking done.
Yeah.
And I left. Now, I did not mean to deconvert. As a matter of fact, we kept trying to go to church.
Totally relate.
I was just trying to find Jesus again. I was trying to replicate that initial experience at 19 that I had when I got converted.
Yeah.
Couldn't find it, and but I was also thinking, well, if I'm not under anybody's microscope, then I'm going to, drink if I want to drink, get high if I want to get high. I'm going to, do those kind of things. And so I started just kind of living a secular life, doing, I like to say I really enjoyed my midlife crisis. I had a blast.
Yeah. So about what year are we talking, Ken?
We're going back now to I left the big church in 97, 98, 99. So by 2001, I was now working in secular work and pretty much out of the ministry altogether.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty typical. I know it was for me, is that whenever I left the church that I was pastoring and we moved out here, part of that was for anonymity. I needed to get out of that small town. But guess what I did when I landed here? I started visiting churches.
Yeah.
I was still looking for Jesus.
We actually did get out of California. I got a job with a large IT company out in Colorado, and moved out to Colorado Springs, where we lived for about 4.5 years working for this company. And so it was a great break. It gave us an escape from the fishbowl that we had lived in Redding all those years, where everybody knew us as, Pastor Ken and Silvia. And so during that time, we tried churches,
we did.
But once the veil's been lifted, once the light's been turned on, reality just has a nasty habit of just being in your face constantly.
Yeah. Well, I think of, you probably know I'm a big deal on yes saying and no saying. And I think religion appeals to no saying. And so the need to be right just becomes so important that you don't have any leeway or grace for fallibility and for nuance. And so if it's a 6-day creation or if it's 6,000 year creation, I mean, like, we start crossing I's and dotting T's, and it just, pretty quick, you're so afraid of reality. You're so afraid of complication. You're so afraid of not knowing. You're so afraid of losing control. You're so afraid of God getting out of the box you've created to keep him in that, these are scary things. And so whenever you get out, it's scary, but it can be exciting. One thing that came to mind while you were sharing your story, you mentioned earlier that when you were in that classroom and the preachers or the professors talking on Romans 4, and you heard an audible voice, much like you did when you got saved, but it was saying the opposite thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I know Bob, every time that somebody says audible on this show, his ears perk up and he's like, so what do you mean by audible? Because as long as I was a Christian, I felt like God was talking to me, but I don't remember anything audible.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and probably audible is not the right word there. It's unsolicited voice.
Okay. Just out of nowhere.
In my head. Yeah. Where it's
that's a good way to put it.
Don't know where the thought came from.
Yeah.
Don't know where it originated from. Now, I know where it originated from now.
So the second thing that came up is I got this picture when you said pastors Ken and Silvia. You see these billboards around town, and it has this, the picture of this the couple, and I imagine there was probably a photo shoot in there somewhere where you guys took pictures to put in the bulletin or maybe even put on the marquee or something that was pastors Ken and Silvia. Did that happen?
Well, in the Baptist churches, women are not, in our Baptist churches anyway, women were not allowed to hold that role.
So they don't look at them as like the couple, some churches it's like the couple is the pastor.
Yeah,
but the Baptists are no, you're the pastor. She's the twofer. She's the twofer.
Yeah. So
okay, 2 for 1.
When you get the pastor, you're supposed to get this amazing administrative assistant.
Oh, I see.
Really?
So were you a stay-at-home mom all these years that he was pastoring, Silvia?
No, there were moments where I took breaks from work because I just didn't want to work because it was hard. It was hard.
What kind of work did you do though?
Whatever I could get, to be honest with you. I didn't get a chance to
mostly retail.
Yeah, mostly retail, but I didn't get a chance to
get to college.
Right. So there was a moment in time when I first graduated from high school that I wanted to be a physical ed teacher because I loved anything that had to do with running. I just, and I think a part of that too, maybe innately, it was kind of an escape for me to get away from the troubles and the struggles. I wanted something that identified me for me and not, well, look at this one and look at this, always this comparing.
Yeah.
Which just drove me crazy and made me feel more isolated because I felt like I didn't have any unique qualities that they could say, well, look at Silvia, this is what she does and she brings value and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. So I was trying to find my way, even in my younger years, to be my own person.
And just to jump in there and say that, and then that becomes exacerbated when we're in the ministry.
Yeah.
And then she is, has no room for her own personal identification. She is now Pastor Ken's wife, which I think comes all full circle to this misogynistic thing that we started with. But
So Silvia, how would you describe your experience as a pastor's wife?
I went along with it, and I have to be honest that when I was in my teen years, I honestly wanted to serve. I to reach out to other people, and I think my coming to Christ was a genuine experience that I had, and I see that because I needed something different than what my family life was giving me, which was very negative and nothing positive. And so when I came to faith, it was out of need of escape to find something better for myself, trying to find myself. And it became kind of a comforting thing for me to find something other than my family life that was all screwed up.
So your entry into not only Christianity, but being a pastor's wife were genuine motives to be in a loving community and make the world a better place.
Yeah, absolutely. I always wanted to serve. And it just happened to come in the way of becoming a pastor's wife. And I prayed. I said, I would love to be a pastor's wife because I would watch the others. And I thought, this is something that I can do. And so I wanted to marry a pastor.
Yeah. At some point, though, with all the infighting and the complications in the politics of church and religion and how screwed up it can get, it obviously got sour for you at times, Silvia, for being a pastor's wife. And did you ever resent it?
I don't know that I actually resented. I think I was more sad. I think I had a little bit more of not understanding why this happened. still trying to be supportive. And but what it did perpetuate in me was a very dark side of inadequacy.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you couldn't measure up.
I could never measure up, and it also played into, you know, the way that I grew up. I could never measure up. It was always the comparing, because along as with what my husband said of not going to seminary or to Bible college or anything like that, it was the same for me.
Yeah.
All I knew is that I wanted to serve, and I didn't know that it necessarily required getting an education for it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Did any of your siblings, your 10 siblings, get an education?
No. Oh, no. Robert got an RN.
Yeah, I have one of my brothers who's an RN, and
but it just wasn't something that was normal in your family. I mean,
that's right.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Did you ever get your Bible study degree or whatever it was, Ken?
No, never did.
So you just took a few classes, and I get that.
Yeah, well, I have probably combined maybe 3 years of Bible college.
Mm-hmm.
What was the name of the college?
Well, it was Shasta Bible College in Redding, California, that I was attending.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I don't.
So, getting back to you were talking about the joys of midlife, that you were experimenting with.
So when we lived out in Colorado, we just really after the first year there, we just took a break. We just stopped going. We stopped even thinking about going to church. And I was riding motorcycles at the time, and we just hooked up with friends and went out and had a good time. Just started enjoying life.
You got your Sunday mornings back.
Yeah, and there were a lot of damn good rides on those Sunday mornings. But even during that time, though, there was nothing being resolved in our lives, either individually or as a couple. We were really just kind of shoving everything under the rug and, pretending and just really, because for me, I was in the mindset that I said, hey, I want to do whatever I enjoy doing. I just want to enjoy my life right now. I don't want to think about all this other shit.
Yeah.
And so, but anyhow, that job wound down. The large Fortune 500 company, and they did a big layoff, and I lost my job. We came back to California. And by this time, our oldest son was, he and his wife were having children, and we wanted to be near the grandkids and all that. So we ended up in Sacramento, 2008.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And the recession hits, but I've got a job and I'm doing okay. But I'm now starting to come to grips with, now this is just my perspective, and I'm starting to come to grips with just an overwhelming sense of worthlessness, regret, inferiority.
Yeah.
One of the things I wanted to make sure I said on the podcast is that Christianity fed the very worst of me for a long, long time.
Yep.
Wow.
And it fed this idea that I was a worthless, depraved, broken victim of God and Satan and the world and my sin nature, and I was everybody's fucking victim. And I began when we were gotten back to California, I was trying to deal with all of that internal turmoil that was going on, along with the stress of a job, being surrounded by a couple of very intense individual bosses, and I was really beginning to be concerned for my mental health. Everything up from some sort of a breakdown to suicide. I was just beginning to grapple with whether or not I wanted to keep on living.
Yep.
And but I had no answers because I'd given up on God giving me any answers. Not that I wouldn't have entertained something if he'd have.
Oh, sure.
If he'd have tried to communicate.
Say something, I'm giving up on you.
Yeah. So, but almost in desperation, I would say, because there's at a point of great desperation where I decided that I was just going to try meditating.
Uh-huh.
And so I practiced meditation for about 2 years and just greatly, greatly enjoyed it. And the one thing that meditation did for me was it gave me a skill that I'd never, ever had in my life. Mm-hmm. And that was a skill of allowing my thoughts to simply be what they are and nothing else.
Yeah.
You know, you breathe in, the thought comes up, you realize you're thinking the thought, and then you release it.
That's beautiful.
And I thought about it just as like balloons drifting away. But it gave me a skill. Now, what I didn't like about the mindfulness was the detachment portion. I didn't care for that. But anyhow.
No, but let's talk about that for a second, because when you're a theist, and like we always say, all humans are meaning-making, storytelling, pattern-seeking creatures. But when you have a high propensity or high need for that, then you assign meaning to everything.
Everything, yeah.
So when there's parking space at Walmart, you give that a meaning. You know, when there's the weather changes or something, you have a thought, you have a dream, which we now know could be a brain fart. You know, I mean, it's like our brains. Yeah. And when you talked about unsolicited, our brains give us unsolicited thoughts all the time.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, especially the nocturnal dreams. Like, where did that come from?
Yeah. We I was thinking about this the other day. We thank God for everything, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we just thank God. I mean, we had a party the other night, and somebody went into the bathroom and plugged up the toilet, and I had to go in there and unstop it. And thank God I finally cleared it.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? We just thank God for but we add these artificial meanings to things.
Yeah.
So this meditational practice brought you fully to the other side, to where thoughts are meaningless.
Meaningless, correct, yeah.
And like balloons, like you said, that you could just release. Yeah. And then maybe we come back to some kind of center where we are, we're attached or we're engaged with our fellow man, but we're not over reading into every goddamn thing that happens as if it's some kind of purpose. This notion, and I know it sounds benign, this notion of everything happens for a reason has got to fucking stop.
Yeah, right, absolutely. Yeah, well, I heard recently everything does happen for a reason. It's called physics. So,
yeah, good answer.
But let me, I don't want, so what mindfulness did for me was gave me a skill.
Sure.
For the very first time. And I realized that a completely different way of thinking that did not come from Christianity, came from Jesus, who's got all the answers, didn't seem to have this answer.
Right.
And so at that point, I began to go, well, what if I got this kind of help from another, quote, religion, not that I viewed it as a religion, then what else is out there?
Right.
That I call my door of permission.
That's right. Yeah.
And I began to think, well, what else have I not considered? Well, I've never considered, I knew nothing about science. If you'd have asked me to explain evolution, I couldn't have given you a thimble's worth of explanation.
Right. Yeah. It's not important to you as a Christian, for sure.
Cosmology or, I just knew nothing of science. And so I thought, well, I picked up a book at the bookstore and that looked interesting and read it and got through the first chapter and went, fuck me. God damn it.
You crawled out from under a rock and the world has been going on.
And then I thought, okay, this was actually I could probably point to an actual moment in time when this dawned on me. But I thought to myself, what do atheists think? I've never listened to an atheist. So one Saturday morning, Silvia was working at the time. One Saturday morning, I sat here in the living room and I put on YouTube and I had Googled atheism. And so up pops this debate between, I don't know if you've ever heard of this guy or not, but this guy named Christopher Hitchens.
Oh, yeah, we heard of him.
And I don't know who the poor schmuck was on the other side of the podium.
Yeah, whoever it was, he's a poor fool.
But I turned on this YouTube debate and started watching this, and I kid you not, within 10 minutes, there was a hole in my living room floor where my jaw hit.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow. I am an atheist.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it was just as clear to me, although I didn't know why. Mm-hmm. I just knew that I no longer believed in any of these trite responses that this man gave to the overwhelming arguments that the Hitch gave in that debate. Mm-hmm. And that was about 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And from then on, it became really a matter of starting to learn what that meant. Maybe that's not the right way of saying it. Just exploring, but I began to think about everything that I'd ever thought about in my whole life, everything I'd ever believed in my whole life.
Yeah, you know what it sounds like between Silvia's story and yours, Ken, and this word has come up over the 2.5 years we've been doing the show, and that is the word homecoming. That you're coming home to yourself, you're coming home to the realization that you're a participant in this thing we call life. It's a welcome home, and welcome to yourself, and welcome to us, and thank you for being here. I mean, this is just really exciting. Now, for the sake of time, we're going to bring it into the home stretch. And I think Silvia said it earlier that you, or maybe both of you said it, that you've got a lot. 60 years of journey through this stuff. Yeah. And I can hear in your voice, and I can also know from experience the politics and the infighting and all of the details of like the clashes within Christianity and eldership and people that come, like the guy that come to your sermon and have some kind of doctrinal warfare over little minute things and then you get to a place where there's a clearing, and it's like I don't even want to think about anything for a while, and you take that break, and then you start to move into like, well, no, I'm curious again, and so you start reading again, and I don't know, it's just a fantastic story, and I know a lot of people relate to it. And
did Silvia, did you have the same experience then with the notion of no God, atheism?
How do you identify?
Theos, as they say.
Yeah, no, for me, it was, I didn't want to accept it. I didn't want to believe that there wasn't, a God or Jesus Christ, because it's really all I knew, that kept me,
That's the only thing holding the universe together.
Yeah. And, to try to explore anything else, even atheism, I didn't even want to explore that either, because I just wanted to know that there's something greater out there than what I was experiencing. And Ken, he would always come to me and talk to me and challenge me and ask me questions. And being not a Bible scholar or any of those kind of things, it really got me thinking. And I think also giving myself permission to think about it and listen to YouTubes, and just started opening more understanding, more doors. And then my whole experience of coming to Christ, I think for me was more out of desperation of finding something better out there than what I was experiencing in my home life.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So where did you end up? I mean, how do you identify?
I don't want to say that I completely identify as an atheist. I want to, believe that if there is a God, he's totally fucked up. And,
well, it's like deism. You mean like he's up there, but he's not paying attention. He's just...
Well, I can explain it to you exactly like what I felt. And I love my father, but he was an absentee father. He was out trying to save the world and completely ignored his family.
Right.
That's how I view it, an absentee father. So whether he's up there or not is I don't know, but I think I would probably lean towards more that I'm more atheist than I haven't come to full acceptance of that, but I sure talk it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
you reserve the right. I understand.
It went from I don't think he's there, but if he is, he's fucked up. I mean, it's like
honestly, he's fucked up big time, because if ever I needed a father, he wasn't there. And that's what I could say in regards to my physical father who gave birth,
Sure.
So I love you, but you know what? You've got some explaining to do.
That's right, Lucy. You got some explaining to do.
You got some explaining to do. So,
yeah, sure.
Well, that's a famous story that there was Robert De Niro was being interviewed, and one of the questions was, if you ever, if you get to the pearly gates and you see God, what would you say to him? And his response was, "You've got some explaining to do."
Yeah.
So, what do you guys do for fun or recreation or?
Well, again, we like hosting. We love having guests come over, and we're involved. I would say more my husband than me involved with the group.
Well, I attend Sunday Assembly here in Sacramento, and then another group called Blasphemy Breakfast.
That's great. I like.
We have them all over the area that they meet once a month, and through that we've begun to form friends, and then we volunteered to host what we call a wine and chit chat here at the house.
Yeah,
excellent.
And so we had this a couple of weeks ago, and what do we have? 20 people?
We had a house full of people.
Yeah, just sitting around, people just talking and getting to know each other. So that's one of the things that we like to do. Is
we like
just
going to the movies.
Being social.
We're sci-fi people. We love science fiction.
Cool.
Yeah, cool.
Just going out for walks. We work out.
We love obsessing over our fucking president.
And not my president.
Yes, I hear you.
Yeah, not my president.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this, and I would like for you both to answer this individually, but what is something that you're very proud of?
I think for me, I'm very proud of that I didn't give up on my marriage and my husband, but I was giving him the freedom to choose what he's wanted for his life. And if that meant that it was not being together, then that's what it meant. And that takes a lot of courage.
Yes.
And bravery.
And love.
I
would, and love. A lot of love. It does.
And a lot of love.
I care so much for him. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I want for him to have the freedom to choose for his own life. And I'm proud of that.
Yeah.
I'm proud of that.
Yeah.
How about you, Ken?
Well, I mentioned I'd had a job. I'd been in the IT business, IT career for almost, I think, 18 years, something like that, after I got out of the ministry. And I was working for this job that was just a soul-sucking, dehumanizing job. And I got fired after 8 years. Mm-hmm. This was just back in September. And so I had 2 months of unemployment before I could find another job that came close to meeting our needs, I think. And but I think in terms of being proud, I'm really proud of the way I handled that, because I didn't panic.
Yeah.
I didn't give in to fear.
Good.
I didn't give in to the voices of apocalypticism that I've struggled with all my life. I didn't give in to fatalism. I don't believe everything will work out.
Yeah.
It may not.
Right.
And I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also proud of the fact that I'm growing in my understanding of reality.
Yeah.
And I don't mind it at all that whether there's a God or isn't a God is irrelevant to me.
Yeah. Right.
I don't mind that at all. I don't mind the fact that the cosmos is this inhospitable machine of whatever the hell it is. And because it just, the fact that I have even just a meager understanding of who I am as a person and what I am or am not doing here is it brings me a great deal of comfort.
Yeah.
That's great.
Well, it actually used to be it'd probably be the source of a lot of fear in that old mindset. But 2 years of meditation and understanding Buddhism and understanding, you've come full circle, and it is something to be proud of. And I'm proud of both of you for sharing your story and for coming on, and we wish you the best.
Absolutely.
Oh, thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Ken and Silvia.
Yeah.
I can totally relate to their story. I notice, obviously I edit all the shows. I listen back to them, and I can tell that there's times when you're like chatty almost. You're so engaged and so excited about the guest. And I think that you relate to some guests more than I do, and I relate to some guests more than you do because of their story.
Right.
And I felt you withdrawing from them somewhat, but only in that, like we had Matthew O'Neill, the guy that wrote the book on the afterlife or something, and that you were. I almost had to like turn your mic off. You were so excited about talking to him because you loved his book.
Yes, I did.
Well, see, I'm the same with these two because I connect with this couple in so many ways.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like exactly what you say all the time.
It is. It's uncanny.
So what does that say? What do we learn from that? So I guess the experience is very similar. I mean,
Yeah, we relate to what we relate to.
But there's just the doctrinal thing, the stuff that they feed you.
Yeah.
If you're in the right mindset, you'll eat it up, man. You'll just get into it. And we can use reproductive metaphors as far as a seed falling on an egg or whatever, and her being fertile or whatever. Yeah. And you have one of those minds that was infertile to all this bullshit. All this doctrinal stuff. I mean, you were sharing, and it was funny because after 2 years of doing the show, you shared a story about one time you were with some radio guy and he kind of pressured you. Oh, yeah.
I'd never heard that until you shared that a couple weeks ago. And you were just like, nope, I'm out. Why are you doing this to me? And
like, what the hell? I mean, it really felt like you're boxing me in here. And I'm like, no, why would I even do that?
Well, not only the pressure to get saved, but even when somebody throughout your life, I'm imagining, come along and say, well, it's important that you believe that God created the world in 6 days rather than evolution. It's really important. And you would be like,
no.
I mean, you just don't have that. You don't have that.
Yeah.
Like I said, the fertile ground in your heart.
Well, if you can show
me,
I guess it's too much. I don't know. Maybe it's my mom. I bet she was a heavy-duty Catholic, though.
You know what you say to a lot of the guests is you say you were just too smart for them. You say it to the guests when the guests would leave or the church would kick them out.
Oh,
you would say to the guests, "Well, you were just too smart for them idiots anyway." And you were too smart.
I never thought of myself as smart. It just didn't make any sense. That's all.
Well,
it's like Santa Claus.
You are not only are you smart, but you're innately humble, and I just never have related to that because I'm innately arrogant.
I guess I don't see the percentage in it for me to be anything but humble. But that's just me, though.
Anyway, Ken and Silvia, bless their hearts, and this late blooming adulthood that happens to Christians.
Yeah, and that's pretty clear that's happening. And how happy Silvia sounds too. Both of them. What a good couple.
They really are.
Man, from tough shit, starting out. But it just shows you it doesn't matter how you start out; it's where you end up. So.
Yeah.
And they're getting
one thing that he said, a couple of things I just want to highlight. Yeah. One, he said Christianity appealed to the darker angels of my nature.
Yeah.
It brought out the worst in me, and I completely agree.
Yeah.
And this is so contrary to what people think, that Jesus makes you a better person.
Right.
Absolutely not. I think Christianity, and everybody's got a different version of it.
Yeah.
But you can get a decent version of Christianity that might help you. Mm-hmm. But it's basically, you might as well be drinking a supplement, and it helps you too. I mean, it's still about you.
Both of them said that once you give up your agency, you give up thinking about it.
Yeah.
I guess it buoys you for a while.
Yeah.
But eventually, I mean, we seek meaning. We always seek meaning, and once that drains away from the religious thing, then what do you got? Well, nothing.
Yeah.
So you have to start thinking again.
So not only by getting out of Christianity, you become a better person, but the other thing that they lack the agency. You get out of Christianity and you start getting agency. So you go from being a bad person to a person to a better person.
Yeah, yeah.
Literally, this is what's so ironic to me about it. It was always weird while I was in the church because I noticed this was happening. But it was so upside down that I couldn't fathom it being true. Yeah. Like you said, millions of people believe this, and everybody's made better by being Christian. I mean, 12-step program. A lot of times people credit Jesus with saving their life. from alcoholism or whatever.
Yeah.
So this is the world, Jesus is good for people. And yet I would see glimpses of it being bad for people.
Sure.
And that the better people in my life were atheists. And or at least, not religious.
Not into religion.
And that's again why it was so important for me to, not important, but how I was so drawn to you.
Yeah. Oh.
Not only to become friends, but to invite you to do this show with me, because I want to show the world what a humble, lifelong atheist, good without God, looks like.
Oh.
Because you're an anomaly in my old way of thinking.
Yeah.
Now the world's opened up to me to where there's not saying you're not.
Yeah, sure, but
still
there's
special,
other people out there.
But there's a lot of people out there that are good without God, and I think talking to people from California, all over the world. That British guy that I interviewed.
Oh yes, Mr. Fluke. Harry Fluke. Yeah.
I mean, they live in cultures where everybody's good without God.
Yeah.
And I've lived in 2 states my whole life, Oklahoma and Tennessee, and they're just saturated with Christian hegemony. Take a drink.
Yeah, really.
But so this is. I love this episode. I'm glad to share Ken and
absolutely.
Silvia with the listeners.
They were terrific. Yeah. Jeez.
All right, man.
I always wonder what's next.
Yeah.
We'll have another one next week too.
People's stories, man. It's just like
it's all what it's about.
Truth is stranger than fiction sometimes.
And
most
yet,
of the time.
they're their own stories. They got their own things, but we relate to them so easily, so quickly. Because we're all a little screwed up. Not a little. We're all screwed up.
We're all crazy.
Yeah.
And I think we do end up like wishing that these people lived closer so we could hang out.
They seem like good people.
It happens almost every week.
That's right.
Within an hour and a half of time, we become friends.
Yeah. So much we have in common. That's the thing.
Yeah.
But enough nuance that it's interesting every week because there's some, even though it's the same, there's always something.
There better be, or we're going to.
That's right. What's the point?
We'd be stopping the show.
That's right.
All right. Talk to you later.
All right. Thanks, Cass.